Once upon a time, nestled deep in the heart of a valley so quiet you could hear a pin drop, was the town of Monotonia. Life here was simple, predictable. The biggest news was Mrs. Higgins winning the pie contest for the 10th year in a row. But one moonless night, a shadow fell over the town square, a shadow far too fabulous to be ordinary. A horse-drawn carriage, painted in shimmering black lacquer with hot pink accents, thundered to a halt. Out stepped a figure so tall, so elegant, so utterly breathtaking that the town's single streetlight seemed to dim in comparison. This was no ordinary visitor. This was Dracula the Spectacular, a vampire with a heart that beat not for blood, but for the beat of a disco anthem. Dracula the Spectacular was a legend in the making, a creature of the night with a flair for the dramatic and a wardrobe that could blind a bat. Her hair was a towering bouffant of raven black, streaked with electric blue. Her gown, a river of sequined crimson, trailed behind her like a royal decree. She didn't walk, she glided, her platform heels clicking a rhythm on the cobblestones that promised a show was about to begin. She surveyed the sleepy town, a slow, mischievous smile spreading across her perfectly painted lips. Monotonia, she thought, looked like a blank canvas. And darling, she had brought all the paint, glitter, and feathers required to create a masterpiece of mayhem and music. The few townsfolk who were still awake, like the baker preparing his morning dough, or the night watchman on his lonely patrol, could only stare in stunned silence. They had heard tales of vampires, of creatures who lurked in the dark and spread fear. But this was something else entirely. This creature didn't hiss. She hummed a show tune. She didn't look menacing. She looked magnificent. Her luggage wasn't a coffin, but a series of sparkling, oversized hat boxes and garment bags that seemed to contain the entire contents of a Broadway costume department. The town had no idea what was about to hit it, but they could sense that their quiet little world was on the verge of a spectacular-sized shakeup. Dracula surveyed her new domain with an appraising eye, her long manicured fingers tapping against her hip. The town hall looked drab. The general store was a snooze. The whole place needed a serious injection of pizzazz. "This will do," she declared to the night air, her voice a smooth, velvety alto that carried on the breeze. "This place is dying for a little bit of life, and honey, I am here to serve it to them, hot, fresh, and covered in rhinestones." With a dramatic flourish and a flick of her cape, she headed towards the old abandoned theater, its dusty marquee looking like the perfect stage for the grandest entrance Monotonia had ever seen. The show was about to begin. Dracula wasted no time. The very next night, the old Grand Theater, which had been silent for decades, flickered back to life. A hastily painted sign, dripping with glitter, announced Dracula's Midnight Cabaret, a frightfully fabulous affair. The townsfolk, drawn by the pulsing disco music and the flashing, colorful lights that now illuminated the town square, gathered in confused clusters. They whispered amongst themselves, their usual placid expressions replaced with a mixture of fear and irresistible curiosity. Was this a genuine threat? A prank? Or something they couldn't possibly comprehend? The mayor, a portly man named Mr. Putter, clutched his mayoral sash as if it were a shield against this sudden onslaught of glamour. As the clock tower struck midnight, the theater doors swung open with a theatrical creak. Smoke, infused with the scent of lavender and mystery, billowed out onto the street. And there, in the center of the stage, stood Dracula the Spectacular, bathed in a single dramatic spotlight. She wore a tuxedo-inspired gown, complete with a sparkling bow tie and a top hat tilted at a sassy angle. She grabbed the microphone, her eyes sweeping over the bewildered crowd. "Hello, Monotonia," she boomed, her voice echoing through the night. "Are you ready to feel the fantasy? Are you ready to dance with the dark side?" Before anyone could answer, she launched into a high-energy rendition of I Will Survive, complete with high kicks and dramatic spins. The performance was a whirlwind of chaotic elegance. One moment, Dracula was belting out a power ballad with the emotional depth of a seasoned diva. The next, she was performing a comedic monologue about the struggles of finding a cape that doesn't clash with your coffin lining. She changed costumes with impossible speed, emerging each time in an outfit more outrageous than the last. A shimmering silver jumpsuit for a disco medley, a dramatic black feather boa for a sultry jazz number, a gown made entirely of repurposed vinyl records for a rock and roll finale. The townspeople just stood there, their jaws on the floor, unable to process the sheer spectacle unfolding before them. At first, the reaction was pure shock. Farmer McGregor, a man who had never seen anything more exciting than a prize-winning pumpkin, nearly fainted. The librarian, Miss Shush, clutched her pearls, her face a mask of disbelief. The initial fear of a vampire invasion was quickly being replaced by a more complex emotion, utter bewilderment. They had expected fangs and fury, not falsetto and fashion. This wasn't a monster from their nightmares. This was a one-woman Las Vegas show that had crash-landed in their backyard. The performance was loud, it was strange, it was completely out of place, and yet, they couldn't look away. The morning after the first performance, the town of Monotonia was buzzing like never before. The usual quiet chatter at the diner was replaced with excited, confused conversations. "Did you see the feathers?" one person would whisper. "And the high notes she hit?" another would exclaim. The initial shock was beginning to curdle into a delicious sort of intrigue. The children were the first to be fully converted. They started imitating Dracula's dramatic poses in the schoolyard and begging their parents for glitter. The fear that had initially gripped the adults was slowly being replaced by a powerful sense of curiosity. What would she do next? What song would she sing? What jaw-dropping outfit would she reveal? Mr. Putter, the mayor, initially tried to organize a town meeting to discuss the vampire problem. He arrived with a list of concerns, ready to rally the people to drive the strange performer out of town. However, he found the hall was mostly empty. Instead, a crowd was gathered outside the Grand Theater, staring at a new poster announcing that night's show theme, Transylvanian Disco Fever. People weren't sharpening pitchforks. They were discussing what a disco fever even was. The mayor's stern speech about public order was drowned out by a group of teenagers, trying to learn the dance moves they had seen the night before. His resistance was crumbling against a tide of sequins and song. Night after night, Dracula's shows grew more elaborate, and the crowds grew larger and more enthusiastic. People started bringing chairs, then snacks, then they started dressing up themselves. Mrs. Higgins, the pie champion, showed up one night wearing a tiara she had fashioned from pie tins. The stoic Farmer McGregor was spotted tapping his foot to a funk beat, a small, shy smile on his face. The performances were still over the top and bizarre, featuring Dracula lip-syncing for her life, telling hilarious stories about her undead ancestors, and even hosting a best-dressed contest for the audience. She wasn't terrorizing them, she was entertaining them. The turning point came during Gothic Glam Rock Week. Dracula took the stage in a leather jacket covered in silver studs and proceeded to deliver a heart-stopping performance of a classic rock anthem. As she hit the final soaring note, the crowd, which had been watching in rapt attention, erupted into thunderous applause. It wasn't just polite clapping anymore. It was a genuine, joyous roar of approval. They threw flowers onto the stage, a mix of roses from their gardens, and plastic daisies from the general store. In that moment, the town of Monotonia realized they weren't being invaded. They were being liberated from their own dullness. The transformation of Monotonia was complete. The once drab town had found its sparkle. The weekly farmers market now featured a spectacular stall, where folks sold homemade glitter crafts and bedazzled vegetables. The local diner added a Dracula's Delight milkshake to the menu, a mix of dark chocolate and cherry with a swirl of edible glitter on top. The town's motto, which had been a boring, a nice place to live, was unofficially changed to Monotonia, now with more fabulous. The fear was long gone, replaced by a deep affection and a sense of community pride in their unique resident superstar. Dracula had not just put on a show, she had started a revolution of joy. Dracula the Spectacular had become the heart and soul of the town. She was more than just a performer. She was a friend, a confidant, and a style icon. She gave fashion advice to the mayor's wife, helped the local choir add a little more oomph to their Sunday hymns, and even judged the annual pie contest, declaring Mrs. Higgins' creation divine, darling, simply divine. The final show of the season was a massive town-wide celebration. Everyone participated. The grand finale featured the entire town on stage with Dracula, singing a glorious, chaotic, and heartfelt rendition of We Are Family, each person wearing something that sparkled under the stage lights. The message of Dracula's arrival had sunk in deeper than any sequin could be sewn. The townspeople learned that being different wasn't something to be feared, but something to be celebrated. They discovered that a little bit of flamboyance and a whole lot of laughter could make life infinitely more interesting. They understood that the most important thing you can do is be yourself, unapologetically and with as much flair as you can muster. Whether you're a quiet baker or a glamorous drag queen vampire, everyone has a unique light to share with the world. Sometimes it just takes a little nudge, or a full-blown disco inferno, to let that light shine for all to see. And so, Dracula the Spectacular found her home, and Monotonia found its rhythm. The quiet little town was quiet no more. It was alive with music, laughter, and the unmistakable shimmer of glitter that now seemed to coat everything in a fine, happy dust. They had learned that sometimes the most spectacular things in life come in the most unexpected packages. And if you're lucky enough to have a drag queen vampire move into your abandoned theater, the best thing you can do is pull up a chair, put on your dancing shoes, and enjoy the fabulous, frightful, and utterly fantastic show. Shante, you stay, Monotonia.